All right. So, across the United States, and you can even go as far as the world, across the world, for hundreds of years, decades upon decades, reports of an ape-like creature, huge hairy monster, a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, the abominable snowman, the Yeti. And in different parts of our country, he has different names. Down south, you have Momo, who is in, I believe, Louisiana, Missouri. You have in, I believe, the Florida swamps, the skunk ape. And then you have over in Arkansas, I think about a 45-minute distance from Texarkana, you have the legend of the Boggy Creek Monster. So these are different variations and different nicknames for the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot. And I think one that really gets overlooked is the one that is a representation of Kentucky, and not just Kentucky, but Eastern Kentucky, where I'm from. And that creature is known as the Hillbilly Beast. Now, stories of the Hillbilly Beast date as far back, and they even, predate Daniel Boone. So, and the description, and I'm going to come back to that, the description of the Hillbilly Beast is long, matted, dark fur. It can be anywhere from, it's been described as being bare minimum 7-8 feet tall to 10 feet tall. And it's appeared to have, weighed around 800 plus pounds, and described as walking, upright, just like a human would. And the thing that's really specifically kind of separates it from other stories of, Sasquatches is during the day, it has these huge black eyes. So when it's been spotted in the daytime, its eyes are like huge and black. But at nighttime, its eyes are that of like a yellow-orange that's glowing. So there are accounts of this creature, of this Hillbilly Beast. And he's always here's the thing. It's a creature that to this day there are reports of this thing being spotted all over the region, even, all over Kentucky, from Louisville all the way, back to Eastern Kentucky, close to the Ohio River. And there's one such sighting from a couple, and this happened, and you can actually view this story there was a TV show called Monster Quest, and the couple is on this show, and they talk about it. And their names, at the time, they were engaged to each other, so they're not married at this point, but, their names were Amy and John Long. Get a little drink here. So at the time they were engaged, and they do what anybody all over across the country does, when they're young and in love, or, engaged, whatever. And it's very popular back home to, go parking on the side of the road or in a secluded area. Now, they've grown up in this area, been in this area their whole life, never experienced or encountered anything weird like this. So they're on a secluded dirt road parking. They got the windows down, doing what a young couple does, an engaged couple does to each other. And while they have the windows, all the windows are rolled down, while they're all down, they can hear this heavy, animalistic breathing, like that. And, it takes them by surprise. So they both, they're sticking their heads out the window looking around, and they hear this heavy breathing. So, it spooks them to a degree, and they decide to leave. Now they've seen deer in this area, and as they're slowly driving away from, this big, animalistic sound that they hear, they have like a spotlight, one of those, I guess, big ass flashlights. Anyway, that's how they, presented it on the show, and they're, shining the light through the Kentucky forest, through the woods. And the light is, grazing over top of deer, and they're seeing the outline of deer, and then several deer, and it's piercing through. Then all of a sudden they come to a very huge shadowy figure. And it was a massive, described as 7 feet tall. And as they shine the light on it, they could see the long matted hair. And the thing that stuck out about this creature is it had orange, yellowish, glowing eyes. And the creature made eye contact with them and looked at them, turned its head and looked at the deer. Looked at them, turned its head, looked at the deer. It did this several times. They leave. So then as they're leaving, because who wouldn't, why would you want to stand there and, go toe-to-toe with a 7 foot, plus 800 pound plus Sasquatch known as the Hillbilly Beast? So they leave, and they get so far away, and the wife, she describes basically a screaming deer, so it's assumed that this Sasquatch, this Hillbilly Beast, had, got one of the deer that they had saw. And that was kind of its conflict of looking at them and looking at the deer, looking at them and looking at the deer. What was it going to do? So that's one of several stories that you will hear from the area of eastern Kentucky about the cryptid creature known as the Hillbilly Beast, our Sasquatch. Now, earlier when I started this, I mentioned Daniel Boone had an encounter. So the Native Americans of the land, they used to call this thing a Yahoo. That's what it was called, a Yahoo. Way before the Yahoo search engine, it was referred to as a Yahoo. Before it was ever called a Hillbilly Beast, before it was ever called a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, it was the Yahoo. And some believe it to have supernatural powers. And so basically the story goes that even Daniel Boone himself had encountered the Yahoo, the Hillbilly Beast, and had actually killed one. And he didn't talk about it too much until, I guess, the latter part of his life, when he basically, didn't feel, didn't really, I guess, basically when he got to the latter part of his life, he knows that he's getting towards the end of his life, and he could care less about the ridicule he's going to, obtain and receive from talking about killing this 10-foot tall hairy beast, this 10-foot tall giant, the Yahoo. And this is even documented in his, I believe it was a book written on him in 1992, his biography. And the report that he would tell people in the last years of his life about encountering this creature and killing it. So I think that's just one of the most impressive things. Maybe impressive is not the right word to use, but one of the most intriguing and amazing things about stuff like this is, there are skeptics about this thing, but then you do have reports from historical figures, whether it's a Daniel Boone or Theodore Roosevelt, who in his personal diary talks about encountering a Sasquatch. So every corner of the world, every corner of the country, we all have our own folklore, our own cryptid creatures, and our own experiences. And this is one I felt that was very important to shed some light on, because it's something from, eastern Kentucky, where I'm from, in the Appalachian Mountains. And if you've ever been in the Appalachian Mountains and it gets very dark and you're standing out there and you just listen in the forest and you'll hear these sounds and stuff. And as you're listening, and if you're experiencing this, if you can imagine as you're standing there that some of the sounds that you're hearing, it's not a bear, it's not a human, but it is this 10 feet tall, hairy, yellow, orangish, glowing eyes creature, known to some as Sasquatch, known to some as a Bigfoot, a Momo, Boggy Creek monster. But in eastern Kentucky, it's the Hillbilly Beast.